Well, join us on the set now is Congressman John Campbell, and he represents our 45th district, and it's more importantly, Laguna Woods. Thanks for joining us on the program today.
Good to be with you, Paul.
Let's talk about that 45th district. The demographic is quite unique because you go all the way from Anaheim Hills to Mission Viejo and sides of Silverado Canyon and Irvine.
Yes, this will be my 5th term in Congress representing Laguna Woods, and also representing 4 other cities: Irvine, Tustin, Lake Forest, and Laguna Hills. But every 10 years there's a census, and the census creates new districts. And the district sizes they were 625,000 people each in 2000. And in 2010 they were increased to about 702,000 each. So I used to have the coast of Orange County. That's all gone now. And so the district starts in Irvine, includes those cities I just mentioned. But the new cities that I picked up in this new district, to which I was just elected in November, include Mission Viejo, Rancho Santa Margarita, Coto de Caza, half of Orange, Anaheim Hills, and then all the canyons, Silverado, Majeska Canyon, everything actually all the way out to the Riverside County line. So it's a much bigger district in terms of geography, because I have all the Cleveland National Forest and so forth that nobody lives in. And it's just a few more people than what I used to have before. But Laguna Woods was in it before and is still in it now. And Irvine, where I live, was in it before and is still in it now.
Does that make it challenging for you now when the footprint is a bit larger and the demographic has changed quite a bit then?
Yeah, the thing that's a little more difficult is that I now have part of Anaheim, which is the largest city in the county, and but only a small part of it, but part of it, and part of Orange, about half of Orange, which is another large city in the county. So I now have a footprint going into a couple of these large cities with a lot of issues, but there are other members of Congress who represent those cities as well. So it's a little more complex in that sense. And also, although I've now been in public office, this is my 13th year in the Assembly, the State Senate, and now Congress, all those new areas I mentioned to you, I actually have never represented. And it's interesting now in my about to be 13-year career here in the Senate and the Assembly, I've actually represented 4 different districts. And I think I have represented all or part of almost every city in Orange County at this point, because I used to have Huntington Beach and Seal Beach a long time ago, and Fountain Valley and San Juan and San Clemente, and now I'm in Anaheim and Orange. So, but it's all Orange County. And I mean, in the end, I don't think that one part of Orange County is that different from another compared to perhaps LA or the Inland Empire or obviously some other part of California.
What do they do when they get you to Anaheim and Orange? They just take you down the main street and say, you have this side of the street?
Well, actually the 55 freeway.
Oh, is that right?
That's actually
That's
the
your
divider.
boundary, huh?
I have all of Orange east of the 55 freeway and all of Anaheim east of the 55 freeway, which just happens to just be Anaheim Hills, or what people call Anaheim Hills. So, yeah, that's pretty much the dividing line.
Okay. Well, you're the chair.
55 and 91.
55
and the 91.
Okay. Well, you're the chair of the House Financial Services Subcommittee on Domestic and International Monetary Policy. That's a big title.
Yeah, they actually just changed the title. I should have told you
I
that.
hope they shortened it.
They did. It's now I'm chairman of the subcommittee on monetary policy and trade.
That sounds a lot easier to say.
Yeah.
So we want to talk about the continuing resolution. This is something that was talked about a lot in the last, especially the last quarter of last year. This is something that possibly will go on until March?
Yeah, I'll give you a little brief. This is about funding the government and so forth, what's going on. The first threshold, if you will, is on March 1st, what's called a sequester, which is about a 9% across the board cut in what's called discretionary spending. That's not entitlements. This does not include Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, but it does include defense, includes national parks, includes our budgets, things like that.
Does it include education as well?
It would include education, yeah, the Federal Department of Education. That will have a 9% roughly across the board cut, effective March 1st. Now that's law. That was the deal that was made in the so-called debt limit deal back in August of 2011. So that will go into effect unless we change it and do something different. Then the funding for the government at those spending levels runs out at the end of March. So we have to extend it for the rest of the fiscal year, which is 6 more months. We'll probably do that soon at those same sequester or lower spending levels. Then the third flashpoint, if you will, is when the debt limit will run out. Today, the U.S. Senate is expected to pass the debt limit increase that we in the House passed a few weeks ago. That will give us a debt limit that will run out sometime between June and August, so sometime this summer. And then we'll have to have a debate about that. What will happen in the interim is we in the House will propose and I believe pass a budget. The Senate who hasn't passed a budget in 4 years. 4 years they haven't passed a budget. They now say they're going to at least, or propose a budget. They haven't even proposed a budget. They now say they're going to propose one, and we'll see. And the president, who's supposed to propose the budget tomorrow, and said by law, and said, I'm not going to do it. And there's no penalty for him doing it, but hopefully we'll get a budget from him. And I think what you're going to see in the April, May, June period leading up to this debt limit is these budgets are 10-year budgets. And if there's a House one, a Senate one, and a White House one, which I hope there is, then what you'll see is people saying, here's three probably very different visions of how we should deal with taxes, deficits, and spending for the next 10 years. And that will be a major debate.
Right.
I'm not sure it'll shape the next 10 years, but it'll certainly shape the next 2, perhaps 4.
Right. And how can we get all these people to kind of cooperate, during this time period as well, so that they can come to the right resolution? Because I believe when this was first enacted, it's almost like, hey, if you guys don't get this done, then we're going to do this. And this is the effect of it now.
Right.
And now again, it's like, okay, we didn't do that, so now we're going to give you another 6 months to get this done.
Right. And I think, when you talk about a debt limit, borrowing money, if you're going to borrow money yourself personally, you need to know how much you're going to spend and how much money you're going to need to borrow to meet your needs. Well, that's what a budget is. So I don't know how we can extend a debt limit without a budget, because we don't know how much we need to borrow if we don't have a budget. So how can you say, all right, I mean, so many, the president and a lot of his people want us to say, oh, well, just give us an unlimited debt limit, whatever. And well, so what? We'll just spend forever? How about a budget? And that's where the debate should be, is how much does each side want to spend? How much does each side want to tax? What are each side's proposals? Who knows? Maybe we'll actually find some things that we agree on, and then we'll go from there.
And that's how you kind of want to bring it down. You want to bring it down to, I don't want to say it, but the lowest common denominator, which is, take it to your home. If this makes sense and you could operate your home, pay your mortgage, pay your car payment, pay for your child's education, and still, have some money to spend, then it makes sense. But if it's just unlimited spending, sooner or later you're going to lose the home, you're going to lose the car, and the kids are going to go to public school somewhere, who knows where.
And if people think that's not going to happen to the federal government, they're wrong. And it's not speculation anymore. Look at Greece, look at Spain, and actually look at Japan. What isn't being talked about by the U.S. press very much, but the largest debt ratio in the world is in Japan, and they're in real trouble. I mean, they have, and you'll be hearing more about that over the next few months. But so it's not speculation that if a country borrows too much, that eventually people stop lending them any money. It's happening in countries around the world. Those are, by the way, those 3 countries, Greece, Spain, and Japan, are the only 3 countries in the world that have more debt as a percentage of their economy than we do. So we're next. So we need to get it under control, or else, and that's the thing, and here in Laguna Woods that people should think about. Medicare will not be there if we leave it alone. Because 2/3 of every time someone goes to the doctor under Medicare, 2/3 of that doctor's bill is borrowed today. 2/3. And the number, by the way, is going up as my generation starts to get closer to Medicare. So, and starts getting into Medicare ages. That will stop. At some point, it will go away. So we have to fix it. And if we want people who are on Medicare now to be able to keep it, we have to change the system for people who aren't on Medicare yet. And that's in order to make it be able to survive. Otherwise, it will collapse for everybody. And that would be a really ugly thing. And that's the unfortunate demagoguery that goes on in this thing. If you want to do something in Medicare, it's presumed that you're trying to wreck it. No, if you want to wreck it, leave it alone. It is absolutely on a course, and it will go off the cliff and crash at the bottom. That will happen. There is no question. So we have to reform it and fix it. And what a lot of the reformation needs to do is it doesn't need to change anything for people on Medicare now, but it needs to change people for people not on Medicare yet, including people like me. We need to look at a different system with a later retirement age and various different things like that. So
now I'm a few years younger than you, and do you see, that worries me quite a bit, but do you see that in the same regard as Social Security as you and I age?
Social Security is actually easier to fix. It's not in as deep a hole. Social Security, whereas Medicare is borrowing 2/3 of every dollar spent today, right now Social Security is only borrowing about 10 cents on every dollar today. Social Security, you don't really have to restructure the system, certainly not for existing people, but not for people about to enter the system either. You can fix it on what you call a straight line basis by tweaking the retirement age a little bit, the eligibility age a little bit, tweaking how people pay in and tweaking, the taxability of what people get out of it. And so you can make a little change here, a little change there, a little change another place, and pretty much leave the system as it is and make it solvent for the next 30 or 40 years. Right. So Social Security is actually an easier fix.
Yeah.
And it's not in as great danger. I mean, it's not as close to collapse as Medicare is.
Okay. Can we keep you for a little bit more? We want to take a quick little break.
Sure,
and come
absolutely.
on back and we'll touch on a couple other topics.
Glad to do.
And we'll be right back with more of John Campbell, Congressman John Campbell, right after this.
Beautiful, isn't it? From San Diego to the Oregon border, California has over 840 miles of coastline. We have wide sandy beaches, most of it pristine and attractive. And we can keep it that way if we handle our waste and litter properly. Did you know that Americans throw away 2.5 million plastic bottles every hour? And although we are smoking fewer cigarettes, cigarette butts continue to be the most commonly discarded litter. Cigarette filters are a threat to our wildlife, which can ingest them, and they are a threat to our environment in terms of fire. Discarded toxin-filled cigarette butts work their way to our waterways, primarily via our storm drains. Our storm drains capture runoff and channel it to our creeks and streams, and eventually, the water reaches the ocean. If you smoke, consider where your cigarette butts eventually wind up. Please don't discard them improperly. Working together, we can keep our coast safe and attractive for all.
Well, we're back with Congressman John Campbell on the site here. You've actually gotten a lot of TV time. I saw you on with Neil Cavuto, and you were on CNN. And a lot of things you were talking about was your concerns again with Greece, Spain, and Japan. And it is a concern to all of us. And it's almost like, I saw some of your interviews. The writing's on the wall, but it seems like no one's reading it.
Well, the writing's on the wall. I think everybody reads it. I don't think anybody denies that that's it. But the cures are not things people want to do. I mean, they're not. We politicians, right? We like to do things that make everybody happy, right? That's the easiest thing to do. But when we were talking about budgets that we have to do, you really only have three choices, or some combination of the three. If we leave things alone, we run deficits of over $1 trillion a year, between $1 trillion and $2 trillion a year, forever. Which won't happen, because at some point they'll stop lending us money. But if you don't change taxes or spending, that's what you have. Okay, so what's the next alternative? Raise taxes. Well, we just had a bunch of tax increases. There's 20-something Obamacare tax increases that are just starting to work through the economy. Tax increases aren't popular. What's the other thing? Cut spending. And that means involving entitlements that we talked about, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, other things, and reforming those to reduce their cost over time. Well, guess what? That's not a particularly popular thing to do. So none of these things are popular. And so therefore, but you got to do something. And so that's why I think in Washington, people know it, but everybody's afraid to get out there. But that's one of the things, and that you'll always hear from me. I don't have this job just to have it forever. I had a real life long before
Yeah.
I was in this job, and the only reason I have it is to try and do good with it.
Right.
And we've got to fix this. This debt is a greater threat to the United States right now than the armies of foreign nations.
Right.
And so,
And do you think we're at the point where we just have to rip that Band-Aid off and just say, we got to get this done now, instead of all these little, procurements of 6 months here, 6 months there? Let's just get this done. Let's start over.
We have a little time now. We do. If the debt markets will give us time, the budget I think that we will likely propose, Republicans in the House, will take 10 years to get to a balanced budget. That sounds like a long time, but if we have that in place, the markets will give us time. That'll be all right. They'll say, oh, okay, they're getting to it. They've got a plan. It's there. It's like we were talking about a personal thing,
Right.
If you've got a problem with your home mortgage or so forth, and you sit down and the bank says, all right, here's my plan, and I'm going to cut this spending. I'll get this thing under control,
Yep.
and it's going to take some time, but I'll get it under control. They'll give you that time. All right, you got a plan. That looks, I
Right.
can see it works. We'll do that. So we have time to do it. The problem that Greece and Spain had is they ran it right up to the wall, and then they didn't have time. They had to fix everything overnight. They had to raise taxes and cut a bunch of spending dramatically, like all at once overnight, and it crashed their economies. And that's why you have 25 to 30% unemployment. And that's U.S. Depression era employment is existing. Unemployment is existing now in Greece and Spain, and it's because they had to do those sort of things. That's what we want to avoid. So now we have time, but we've got to start moving down the road. Right. If we don't start moving down the road and ease ourselves into this stuff, so we don't have to do anything dramatic we have, now. But if we don't start to do a little something now, we will have to do something dramatic later, and it'll be ugly.
What are your thoughts on pension reform in the future?
When you think of it, Social Security is a pension system. And we have pension reform, and there's pensions in private industry, there's pensions and what we have done as a society very broadly is we have promised people pensions that we're not able to deliver. And it's really easy to say to somebody, oh, okay, 30 years from now, I'll give you the moon, the sun, and the stars.
That's right.
Except when 20 years goes by, and now it's only 10 years away, the moon, the sun, and the stars become really hard to deliver. So this is something as an entire society. It's not just government in this. It's private industry, private sector, and individual households that we've got to work on. And it's going to be a real problem for my generation and the next generation is to the baby boomers and younger than that in trying to figure out how we're going to make retirement promises that we can keep.
Right, and continue to support it. And the other thing is people are living longer. And that's really, the health benefits that go along with that are very expensive.
And as I often point out, when Social Security was put in place, the average life expectancy of the average American was 60. And it started at 65, Social
Right.
Security. So the average American had been dead for 5 years before they collected Social Security. So the system worked pretty well. Today, the average American lives to be 80.
Right.
And we now allow you to collect Social Security starting at 62 if you want to. So that's a good thing, and hopefully the average American will live to be 85, and hopefully that will continue to happen. But you can't leave the same systems in place. You have to look at some different things, and this stuff is not easy. We say, well, people just need to work till they're a little older, and that's great in my kind of line of work. But if you work a physical labor,
Right.
you work construction or something like that, those joints,
No.
you may live longer, but it's a lot harder to do that kind of work later in life.
Right.
You just can't
And
do it.
so many people can be the foreman or the manager, because
That's right.
out of all those hundreds of people, only
You
one
can't-
person is going to be the boss.
That's right.
tough.
So that's what I mean. There's not an easy solution to this, but again, we have to understand we have to stop making promises to people that we can't keep, and that's what the government has been doing for a long time, and even private industry has been doing for a while, and so on the pension issues.
Okay, before I let you go, I wanted to know your thoughts on Senator John Kerry, who's named Secretary of State yesterday.
Yep, I did not. I'm not a senator, so I didn't get a vote on whether to confirm him or not. But I would have confirmed him. Would have voted to confirm him. I'm not a big fan. I wasn't for John Kerry in 2004. I'm not a fan of his politics and a lot of things that he did in the past. But President Obama won the election, And the president, in my view, you give the president a lot of leeway in allowing that person to appoint people who agree with them. And what you want to say is, are they qualified? You know, do they have the necessary experience and background for the job? And you have to say John Kerry certainly has the necessary experience and background for the job, and he agrees with President Obama, which I don't agree with on many foreign policy issues, but I wasn't elected president.
Right.
Barack Obama was. And so, but what I worry about is where President Obama and now Secretary Kerry will take the country is they seem to be totally focused inward, that it's all about, if you listen to President Obama's inauguration speech, he really hardly said anything about the rest of the world. It's all about his domestic policy agenda that he wants to put in place, with which I disagree completely. But it's like their new foreign policy is to ignore the rest of the world, is to look totally inward. And I think that's a mistake, because the rest of the world will not ignore us. And if we're not, and I don't want to, I've been against the war in Afghanistan for a long time. So I think we ought to get out of there. So it's not that I think we should be in every place all the time, but we can't disengage from the world, or the world will engage with us again in a very bad way.
Right.
And we've seen plenty of history of that in the 20th century, where we tried to not be involved in things, but they came across oceans and involved us.
That's right.
And we weren't ready. And so I hope that we don't reduce our engagement too much and our preparedness.
Well, we wish you well. You have a lot on your plate right now, and I know we have a lot of issues to discuss. You're going to actually be on a program called Legislative Connection with Wendy Bucknam a little bit later in the month and throughout the month, so we look forward to your conversation with her. We thank you so much for joining us on the program today and giving us
Thank
your
you.
thoughts on the economy. Before I let you go, you got your bachelor's degree at UCLA and you got your master's at USC, right?
That's right.
So do you just root for the highest ranked team when they play each other?
Let's see, since my wife went to USC and both my children graduated from USC,
So you're
and
a
I paid
Trojan.
that tuition, fight on.
He's true. That says it all right there. Well, thanks you so much for joining us on the program. If you'd like to learn more about Congressman Campbell, be sure and visit him on the website. That's at campbell.house.gov, and you can get a lot of information regarding what's going on throughout our district, the 45th district, but also what Congressman John Campbell is proposing and working for you out there. Well, we'll be back with more of the Channel 6 News Hour tomorrow. Be sure and join Ken Goldenberg. He'll have a full show for you tomorrow. We thank you so much for joining us here on the News Hour, and we'll see you again next time.